The Western Cape Department of Agriculture estimates the recent floods caused damage of over R1 billion. The department says it considered damage to primary agricultural sites in the West Coast, Cape Winelands and the Overberg, and confirmed extensive damage to riverbanks, irrigation equipment, private roads, vineyards and orchards. Newzroom Afrika's Athi Mtongana is in Stellenbosch and joins us now. Athi, at R1 billion, that is a huge amount of damage that has occurred. Break it down for us as to how they arrived at these numbers, and certainly if many of these farmers will recover.
Well, R1 billion is not a small financial cost that would have to be coughed up to restore and repair the agricultural infrastructure damage that was caused by the severe floods that recently took place across the Western Cape province. Now, I want to break the numbers down for you because they did have an assessment that they conducted recently as the Department of Agriculture in the Western Cape. So they're estimating costs as the following. For irrigation, they're looking at about 7.7 million rands. For fencing, they're looking at around 1.4 million rand. For the rehabilitation of rivers, riverbanks, removed upstream and deposited downstream rivers, they're looking at a cost of 748 million rand. For crop losses, they're looking at 278 million rands. And they're also looking at a cost of clearing some of their weir to provide drinking water to about 400 people here at some parts of the Western Cape at 120,000 rand. So they're saying this 120,000 rand does not take into consideration the potential loss of experience along the agriculture value chain, or does it provide any insight into the impact of future exports? You may know that the economy of the Western Cape also relies on the agriculture sector. And so this estimation, Hugo, will then be put forward to the National Department of Disaster. That's the next step for the Department of Agriculture here in the Western Cape, is to approach national and to ask for the disaster to be declared in the province as a result of the floods so that funding can be released.
Now, I think a lot of it speaks to rehabilitation that will need to take place of the various areas in the Western Cape. Now, when we juxtapose that to what's transpired in the KZN last year and the year before, as far as floods were concerned, much of that has not been rehabilitated almost 2 years later. Do we expect the Western Cape government to be able to act on this quickly?
Well, the next step, which is to update the Premier of the Western Cape, because some of the officials that assisted in that assessment process of actually getting to the extent of damage, they will be approaching, like I said, national government to have the floods that took place here in the Western Cape declared a disaster so that funding can be released. We know how the track record is insofar as mitigating disasters in South Africa generally, even though the Western Cape is governed by a different political party. We know that in KZN, for example, Parliament even went as far as to set up a committee that would play as an oversight to monitor the funding and the progress and the interventions in the KZN province. But here I can tell you that they have a different system because obviously, like I said, they're governed by a different political party, the Democratic Alliance. And so the assessments that have been made are particularly around the agriculture sector. So they did not just look at, you know, how they did in KZN, for example, where human settlements was also involved. Here, this assessment that has been conducted with a financial cost of an estimation of over 1 billion rand is centered around agriculture and the infrastructure damage thereof. And so what they will be doing, as I said, is to approach national government to have the disaster here, to have the floods rather declared a disaster. So if you were to compare it, here the focus is really agriculture as opposed to human settlements, because that's a whole different ballgame which has not been included in this assessment.
Athi Mtongana coming to us from the Western Cape, as that assessment is coming through of the amount of damage at R1 billion to the agricultural sector. Appreciate your time this afternoon.